God's dream, well, son of God's dream. But yeah, as far as like the attraction, like I see the attraction to guilt, I see the attraction to death. And all of that is just me, you and you, me and me. There's nothing out there. So one of the things that I have really seen very clearly is that most of the time when I'm discussing things, I still think I'm talking from a personal self in a body. So this is where I'm being guided now to kind of realize that none of us have ever been in the body. You know, the body itself is just like false evidence appearing real, right? So, you know, the beauty of the classroom right now is to look and see that the universe is giving us a lot to bring up all our hatred. That's what it's for. Why? Because it's not who we are. You know, this mind never saw that an ego is 100% hate. But the superego, that's the part, that's the problem. The critic. All right, that was me. What happened here?
I'm sorry, that's me. All right.
Okay. So in any case, like, you know, the realization that you realize that the ego doesn't even know what happened here. It just knows the past, and it'll bring back the past of someone that hurt this mind or someone that wasn't fair. And, you know, I can see now, not only can I see peace instead of this, but I can see now as I'm going deeper that the ego is becoming what they say in the Course as vicious. But there's an awareness of the oneness, the infinite self that I truly am, realizes that it's for me when the ego gets vicious. It's nothing to be afraid of because it's just energy of thought, you know? And it's coming back to the infinite, realizing, well, I never moved from any of this. This was all just a happening. And it's a difficult one for the ego to say it's meaningless, but it's completely meaningless. It is. It's completely meaningless. So, you know, when Lynn last night played We Are the World, and she used some of the archetypes that are out in the world seemingly causing problems. But what happened for this mind was I got very calm, and I could see that the Christ is here. We are really, and we can't know the Christ or that it's here if we're covered with more judgment. Sharon will never like Donald Trump. Sharon will never like the way the Republicans think. But that's Sharon. But Sharon also has what they would call the evil side. And that's hidden in the figures outside of me. Because we all made an evil dream. There's no dream here that's not evil because we're going to die. You know, we're here and we just hold on to the body. And when I say we, it's really a we. What I learned in the 12 steps is they call it a we program. Now, I realize it's only my mind that I need to really be responsible for. But the we program works because as I see the Gather opened years ago, and I really got a lot from that. I mean, I had a lot of breaking up of the ego before I came here, but I was so unaware. You know, and the inability to want to be right is so dug deep into the being that it's just little by little saying there is nothing that is right or wrong. Only thinking makes it so. So this is a thought world. And, you know, if we want to, we can really right now, you know, just stop it. Stop the madness. And, you know, my husband has been like going through something and he's doing better now, I think, but he doesn't talk much to describe, you know, how he feels. So we're an interesting couple. But what he's trying now to do is come back, either like Dove, I spoke to Dove about it, that, you know, he could go back into the 12 steps or do something to keep you in the moment, right? Because the ego is the movies that I love on TV. They're all me. I'm posting them, but not me, this character. That's the whole point of A Course in Miracles, to hang in there. Because if you think you're a character, and I'm going to say this, Keith is right. So many times I thought that Jesus was talking to Sharon. He's never talking to Sharon because there's no Sharon. However, there's a mind that believes there's a Sharon, right? And that mind is something that I see now how vicious and hurtful it can be in all families. Alone, like expectations of believing I have a choice here on how I expect, to be treated. And I'll give you an example. In Altoona, it's a very different place to live than Philadelphia. And I guess anybody could imagine that, right? But what ego was coming really, really in the forefront yesterday, because every time I sub, if they're short in a school, I have to go to another school. And ego comes forward and says, you should have a union. You should have a union. Nobody should treat you like that. And that's the energy that is death. Because accepting what is, it wasn't a big deal that I could go to another school. It was the arrogance that I felt at the time because they weren't making it fair. Now, where have I not made something fair? Oh, a lot. So to look at the viciousness in my mind is the work now that I can see that I personally am feeling more and more to be done with it all. Now, that doesn't mean sometimes that I won't post things, but I'm not feeding it. And I'm grateful because we are really in a different timeline here in this illusion. We are watching a country just be torn apart. And that leads the healthy or the true mind into just don't touch it. Don't touch any of it. They're just 10,000 things rolling around in mind. So what I'm going to turn today, because I told Lynn to change this to, because this is all Wapnick, and I've stayed with, Wapnick, but I still do read other things because the way I'm being trained by my, inner teacher is basically the truth is the truth. You'll see it everywhere. And to just say, well, this is the best, the best book or whatever, that's just another opinion, right? But you can't have an opinion when it comes to the infinite self. No, that just is isness. It's remarkable that we were able to have this seeming movie. Remarkable. I want to see, I love Ken's books because he does answer questions that are just, well, here's one. A woman asked him, I was with a friend whose husband had died, and she asked me how A Course in Miracles views death. She's not a student of the course, but what I said made her angry, so I assume I was not being kind. So then Ken says, not necessarily. Being kind does not always mean the other person will be accepting of your kindness. What is important is that you recall as best you can what was going on within you. Of course, it is possible you were not being kind, but it is also possible that you were. It is certainly impossible to judge someone else, but it is equally impossible to judge yourself and know your inner motivation. If you feel you were peaceful and not trying to conceal anxiety, anger, or fear, you need not go any further with it. So it's always about the feeling, right? The woman was asking, her friend asked me how A Course in Miracles views death, and she's not a student. Now, we're all doing the best we can is what I'm going to come up with. And we are made from the Holy Self. That's who we really are. We're just this mirror that has cracked, and these are billions of parts of the mirror. And the mirror is nothing but a mirage, right? So he's saying sometimes you can be very loving towards someone and that person will still get angry. If you are in a relationship that is based on a secret vow of mutual anger attack, marriages of that nature have lasted 50, 60 or more years, and all of a sudden one of the partners becomes kind and announces, I don't want to do this anymore, the other person will be very angry. You're not acting the way we agreed. You're supposed to be miserable and nasty so I can feel unfairly treated. Yeah, we're hungry for that. Hungry. And in order to be in true perception, it's all about the grievances in my mind. Whether it be, if it's hot out, that's a grievance. Whether it be, I went for a walk this morning with Scruffy and, it wasn't completely perfect to walk. And that's a grievance, because this is all what is. And to do the real work is to stay away and not touch the ego. But that happens one moment at a time, or one day at a time, really. He's saying, Ken, I don't know what your motivation was at that point. Now, motivation is really big in the 12 steps, too. They always ask about your motives, because if your motives are to be liked, approved of, even safety, I mean, all of that is for the ego, because the ego believes it's separate and it believes it can die, right? So he's saying you have to really go inside, because you got the answer. And the answer always is acceptance. It's always acceptance, because either this is real or it's not real. So what he's saying here about these secret vows, I'm almost sure now that anyone that bothered me was a secret vow I made with them. Because it's very true that all of this is planned perfectly for us. And it's already over, which is the most important thing to remember. You don't have to do anything here, is really what the whole thing is about. But you want to, because you want to live your life. Why do I come on here? Awakening is what we are. That's just the truth. I come on here because as an ego still, I want to feel better and let the ego relax more. The ego pushes back to a point, but it wants to be home too, because it's a foreign object. And that's just a story that my mind just made up, because really nothing happened. So somebody asks him, suppose you have 2 Course in Miracles students, one of whom is sick and the other's constantly reminding him that this is a dream. Now, this will probably be very helpful. Again, it depends upon the motivation. If you're reminding your sick friend that the world is a dream and sickness is a defense, you should look within yourself and try to determine whether you're coming from a loving space. If your friend is a Course in Miracles student, the chances are she is aware intellectually that this world is a dream and sickness is a defense against the truth. If that were the case, to remind her of that is not very loving or caring. It is like rubbing salt in a wound. See, he is so tender, Ken Wapnick. When I say tender, we all want to get people out of pain, because when we see people in pain, if we're still believing we're separate, we get pain, because these are concepts. Like when I am really angry with somebody, the infinite self is never really touched at any of this. But I join with the ego, and the ego can only fight the ego. So here we are in a mistaken identity, taking all of it and believing the ego that, no, you've been this way for 70 years. You got to stay this way. And the time of love right now is really where I'm going. If we don't go with a call for love or complete love, we are being swallowed up by the matrix. And the matrix right now is on steroids with hate, right? I mean, for an ego, everything's being taken away. They're just like, it's something like the movie Apprentice. But if you can look at it, Sharon, I'm talking to you, Sharon, and just say to yourself, this is a movie, and isn't it a good movie? Now, I love movies, and I know a lot of people in our group say they don't like scary movies, but that's not me. I like that because the ego likes it, obviously, likes to be off its seat. So The Handmaid's Tales is coming back next Tuesday, and I loved it. I didn't want to watch it. And my sister, Amy, said, watch it. The acting's great. So after what's going on now, I really had like a grievance on that. Like, how can I watch it? My God, this could happen here. It can only happen in the mind. Okay. Keeping that in mind is your freedom. You're not, Sharon, I'm talking to you. You're not in a world. There is no world. You're in conceptual mind, which is just a complete dream, and it means nothing, right? So he's saying here to this woman, if you are reminding your sick friend that the world is a dream and sickness is a defense, you should look within yourself. See, that's the thing. Ken is very clear that we don't, obviously our friends here that we've been with for almost 20 years knows that we want the truth, so they might mention it. But what he's saying here is if your friend is a Course in Miracles, the chances are she's aware intellectually that the world is a dream and sickness is a defense against the truth. If that were the case, to remind her of that is not very loving or caring. Now, I want to say this about him. This is a man that was very deep. I mean, he was a doctor in psychology. He understood Freud. He understood, the other guy that I've been listening to. You know who I'm talking about, Dove? Carl Jung. Yeah, if you look at Carl Jung's work, we, as the Son of God, or at least for me, I have hidden so much hatred. Now I have seen it act out, and I'm shocked sometimes. But the rage that's been coming up intermittently is now being attended to by Spirit, because there's no way that we are completely in heaven and this world is happening too, right? You can't be in both. Now, the balance is to honor the experience and let it go, right? But he's saying, don't bring that. It's not loving and caring if you just throw it in their face. It is like rubbing salt in a wound or stepping on a person who is already down. Surely there are times when a reminder can be loving and helpful, but very often it is not. Again, you should always use being normal as a criterion. Normal people in the presence of someone who is sick, especially a friend or family member, are kind. You do not have to be a spiritual giant or understand the difference between non-duality and duality to know that if someone is sick and in pain, kindness should be offered to that person. So that's coming from, I would say, like, and Ken Wapnick is our teacher. I don't know if he's everybody's teacher, but he was mine, along with Dove, along with Lynn. Everybody to me is a teacher for me because I'm only seeing my own consciousness, right? But he is saying that to act normal is to meet people like, I was substituting. I think I mentioned it when I first started yesterday at a school where it was probably one of the hardest experiences that I had because I was exhausted. And we had it was maybe 25, 6 and 7 year olds, and they didn't listen. And it was like, I pulled everything out of my box, all my tools, and it went well the day. It really did. But, what I was seeing is the arrogance of ego coming and saying, why did they switch my schools? I didn't say this from the beginning. I was going to one school that I picked that I could handle and not this school. And they sent me to the school, Penn Lincoln. And my husband, who's very protective, said, I don't want, if they do this again to you where they're moving you around, you don't need to do this. But I come in and go inside. And if everything here is the same, why wouldn't I be at a school where they really need help at times? Just because I'm 70? The ego would like to tell me that my health's not bad, but my health is good because I am the infinite self. I am spirit. I am a part of God. And I am very holy, which means everyone is. So the wholeness that I am now comfortable with is the identity change. It's time to change completely the identity because the ego cannot stop judging. That's just part of its whole script. So rather than fall into hell by believing it, because that's what it is, it's pure hell, just watch it and judge not. So he says this too. Similarly, it is not loving to reprimand a person who's watching a news program with you and who gets upset over scene of bombings, genocide, and starvation. What are you upset about? It's all a dream. Is this their script? Sadly, there are numerous accounts of students doing just that. Anyone who makes such unloving comments must be coming from a fearful place, and rather than look within and ask Jesus' help, to deal with the fear, the person simply ignores it because it reminds them of their own hostility and threat of annihilation. Okay, so these are like, you know how the course you can read over and over and you just keep seeing things that you didn't see before. Well, it's like that with his writing too, because we have a fear of annihilation. That's all part of this, but we can't be annihilated because we haven't been informed. But you know, the fear of God was written in the script. The script was written that it's an attack on God, and we do it real well, even in form with like Christianity or like the New Order that they're calling, you know, I don't know, Christian nationalism. And, you know, how can I look at this from a point of love? Okay. Well, first off, how much does Sharon like movies? So I can talk to the character and just allow the character to know that the idea never left its source, that I am with God always. And I can look and say, and have compassion for people who's playing a part that's pretty hellish, like Putin, right? I mean, that's just a hell. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. I'm quite sure he's taken something to make sure he's numb, or Trump, or whoever. So that's where compassion comes in for them. First, seeing them in true compassion is silence. And then looking and watching and seeing, how could I possibly know that this is not for me? And that's what I do. I bring myself back to the only thing that's real, which is now. You know, since we are a sonship, which is all interconnected, when we get on the same page, ideas grow stronger, right? So he says, I think what Ken really taught the most was to look at this darkness, not to just say, yeah, check. No, to look at it. So my mind can finally say, well, I didn't have such a great ego like I thought, because that's what the ego wants to do. It wants to say, well, you're a nice ego. First of all, the ego isn't even real, and you can't have an ego without being in duality. So you will always have negative behavior in the ego. You know, it's just so like, you know, important. And this is the thing. I just picked this book up today, not realizing, but I said to the inner teacher, pick now everything for me. Because I can see when I'm in the personal mind, I'm just repeating the same thoughts. They just like, the ego is genius because it really tricks us into believing that we're people. Oh, Regis. Okay, go ahead, Regis.
Good morning, Sharon. How are you?
I'm good, Regis. I'm good.
You've been saying some good things ever since you got on the mic this morning. So you just mentioned again just our thoughts about our current president, and you also was saying how, you know, one thing that you said that really sparks is, you know, Ken being a person that's willing to look. And I think when we find ourselves in this human experience, and Dove brought it up Sunday about Regina Dawn Akers when someone come to her for counseling. You know, she just asked, "Are you willing to see this different?" You know, if no, well, I can't help you. If yes, well, you already been helped. You know, so that kind of plays the same way to me with this, with our world. No matter what world we living in, no matter what the situation is, whether it's national, local, or within your own family or neighborhood. Am I willing to be wrong? Am I willing to be wrong about what, Regis? Am I willing to be wrong that the country is not being ripped apart? Because here's the thing that I said the other day when I was on here about truth. Truth is true. If it's true for everybody. So there are millions of people that don't feel like the country's being torn apart. They feel that the country's being put back together. You know, they
Well,
feel
it's
like
a perception, right?
They
It's all
feel like Humpty
perception.
Dumpty sit on the wall, had a great fall. All the king's horses, all the king's men. Now we're putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. So it's I'm frightened but it's everybody frightened. What this person says and does frightens me. So we can say, oh, he's a frightening person. He's a dangerous person. But does everybody that's aware of him and listens to him and sees him, are they frightened? There are, there are people that are applauding. There are people that are smiling and cheering and toasting and celebrating. So I have to go back to it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. I have to be willing, not say that as a cliche, but actually like, I could be wrong. I really don't know what this is for or where this is going. And in that, for me, I won't say that there is no thoughts or no concern or I'm just a blank slate. But there is a pathway back to peace. There is a pathway back to what is real and what is wholeness. But am I willing to be wrong? What we say, am I willing to see willingness? Sometimes what we're willing, am I willing to see this differently? Would mean then I have to be willing to see myself as wrong about all of my assumptions and judgments about this personal situation. And I think that's the mastery of what you're saying about Ken right now. There is a tremendous willingness that you see in him. That and if you see it in him, then it's in you. So it's great that you see it in Ken, but that same
Yeah, you got to
that
own it,
same
right?
that
You got to
same
you got to
willingness is
trust it.
Sharon. Yep.
Right.
And being willing to say, hey, I could be completely wrong. I don't really know how this gonna pan out, because there's millions of Americans that are happy and sleeping well at night. And I'm tossing and turning. So can I just hold space? And when we really say above all else, I'm willing to see, we have to make sure we just not doing a cliche, that we really have surrendered our thoughts and our judgments 100% to, you know what? Maybe it is and maybe it isn't. Thanks, Sharon.
I just love what you just shared. I love everything that you said. I thought about that too. Like, you know, this is about perception and, our 10,000 stories or thoughts in our mind or whatever they are. And half of the country thinks that our president is really like cleaning up the mess that Biden made. And we're like saying to ourselves, well, he didn't do anything wrong. It was the MAGAs. Now, there's so many ways to really make this very simple. One of my favorite books, and I really want to bring it in here sometime, is Living Reality. And it's like a retreat with Sailor Bob Adamson. And what he says in this book is, of course, things repeat because the energy of the vibration are spinning. You are never in a body. It appears like I'm in a bedroom right now with my dog and on Zoom, but those are images in the mind, right? Ego didn't like a lot of people, and ego liked a lot of people. Why does ego like people that are a certain way? Because that's what the ego believes, right? Being mean to this ego, when I'm mean to someone, this ego beats the crap out of me. I mean, Sharon's just in hell because the kind of person I am is always like not wanting to make, and I'm lying because I'm like every other ego. I did like confrontation. I did like, sometimes to be right and all of that. But when I look at what I'm really doing to not only myself, but the sonship, because we're all connected and nobody is healed alone. So to try, the ego wants to be a part of it. So how do I get the ego to be a part of this? Well, certainly to accept it. That's the only thing you can do with an ego is accept it. So, and Sharon, the character, was always a drama queen. And, you have to go back into the life that she had. My parents did not talk low. They loud. They would call me Sharon like that. It was like, I grew up in a very, what's the word? Well, I always say George Cassandra's parents. They were all Bickersons. They just bickered. And the drama, like my father, like if I did one thing, like a painting or something, it was the best painting he ever saw. So the whole idea is that in the character, there's an extreme behavior, but that's not who I am. That's what I got when I came in to undo. Because the hell of this world, and it is hell, make no mistakes, if I believed every thought, I would be in hell right now. I don't like, as a character, unfairness, but where have I been unfair? And I have. But that's the digging deep and looking at how much hate is in my mind, right? Because it really is like that. You know, like I scared myself years ago. I was in Regina's one of her retreats, and a lot of unconscious stuff were coming up. And I think I told you guys a couple times that I went on a website who this woman was talking about, you know, addicts and, you know, and saying they shouldn't get disability, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. And I would never do this, but I was probably, because what's going on is, and make no mistakes, because I would think it's going on with all of us, the deepening is going to bring up more hatred. And that is for us. Rather than repress and say, oh, I'm a Course in Miracles student and I am a great one, I really live by these rules. Who am I talking to? I can only be talking to me. And as the higher self, everything's perfect. And then the ego says, well, there's nothing to do then. And I want to do. Now, I do use substituting as like a ministry, in the sense, even when I work with children, that's what Spirit has given me, that you use this where you're there for one purpose, to love these kids, but see them as the Christ. Because if you see them as these individuals, my God, I had 3 kids yesterday and the poor kids couldn't help it. Their egos, they couldn't help what they were dealt, but they were very disruptive and they were exhausting. But then I realized, who's exhausted? You know, I have to tell you, a while ago, I know that Dove knows about the Headless Way. It's a great program. And Daniel Shea's a friend of mine, and I've gone to his classes. He's quite good at what he does. And he had said, an exercise, when you get in the car, you don't move. Just the seeming things, the objects move. But you, as the infinite, never moves. It's all just a mirage. So like breaking up with the ego is just saying, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be like everybody. You know, I think part of the reason I have a problem with the ego is because I want to be like everybody else. Why? We're all one. We are like everybody else, but not in our Halloween costume. Regis, you go ahead. I love when you share.
Thank you, Sharon. Just allow me to go into a rabbit hole for like 35 seconds. Because when you said about how you see your substitute teaching as a ministry, that's, you know, you and I are on the same page with that. And this was just yesterday, because, and I typed when you said that in the chat, you know, every encounter is a holy encounter.
Yes.
So to me, being at that school is just as holy as sitting here in this conversation. You know, if when we really understand that every encounter is a holy encounter, and every encounter is teaching and learning. And there was a young lady, I think these was 4th graders at Lynn's favorite school. What is it? Nettie. I was at Nettie Free. And these 4th graders, and this one girl, she didn't have a bad attitude at all, but she was so needy. And I came over to her and I talked to her. I say, what's going on with you? I say, you've had to go to the bathroom, go to the office, I say, you really having a rough time, seem like being able to just settle down. And so she told me something, but then later, I can't remember what she told me then, but I wasn't irritated by it. I was like, you know, what's going on? Anything you want to talk to me about? You know?
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And so, but later that evening, she told me, and everybody brace yourself for what I'm about to say. She told me her mother died in November, and I was like, oh my Lord, I'm glad I didn't get irritated with this child, that I actually tried to
Yeah.
offer her love, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and I asked another teacher across the hall. I said, "So this girl told me her parent died." I said, "Is that true?" She said, "Yeah." And I asked her, I said, "Well, who's raising her? Is she with her father?" She said, "No, her father was never in the picture, and her stepfather never adopted her. So we don't know who she's living with, you know." So I mean, this just happened in November, and I'm like, this child. I mean, I'm like, to me, she's a hero. I mean, to even be functioning as well as she's functioning with
Oh,
something like that that's going on in their life. So, like you say, we go into these places, we think, oh, I'm just going to Walmart. Oh, I'm just going to work today. But if we open ourselves up uh, to that Course in Miracles prayer, I'm just here to only be truly helpful. And that's whether I'm in a spiritual forum, uh, reading a spiritual book, or whether I'm just doing what I think is just everyday living. You know, but once we come to a place and realize everything, every moment, and I'm even trying to even more so remember when I'm at home, every moment I'm in the house with my spouse, it's a holy encounter. It's not, oh, that's my wife and look at what she did, you know, and look at what she doing, but really trying to embrace that. Like Tracy asked me, well, when you gonna start your podcast? I said, I don't know when I'm gonna start my
oh, I
podcast.
can't wait. I should do that because I just love your voice. Go ahead.
Well, what
Yeah.
I told Tracy was, because everything I do is just as holy as me doing a podcast. I
Mm.
have I have no line. So there's not an urgency to sit down on a microphone and open a book or try to tell somebody something. Because every moment that I encounter another is just a bigger teaching and healing moment as anything else I can do. I told you it's all the same to me. But anyway, now I'm really down the rabbit hole. Take it away, Sharon.
I don't see a rabbit hole there at all. You know,
Okay.
that's just the ego just coming out and saying you're not making sense or whatever it's saying. It's not true. You're
Okay.
actually a wonderful teacher. And yes, if you do a podcast, I'll be listening. You know, I have like, okay, there's no specialness because really, when it comes in this process, I think everybody's teaching from their heart and I love everyone. But at different times, there's different teachers that appeal to you more. And it doesn't mean that the other teacher isn't as important. And honestly, I had a temper tantrum with Awakening Together because of some of the things, blah, 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 that they say. Not, they're not even there anymore, the people, but just the fact that I was still like, you know, Sharon the teacher. And when you talk to a student, you should always be blah, blah, blah. And I didn't see that I had a grievance as much as I was enjoying the grievance. Okay. So the Course in Miracles comes alive when you see how much you enjoy the grievance. And you know, it's interesting. I haven't really spoken to in you know Miracle 365. I just decided to join it because I feel like this. At this point, I just want all of it. I want all of the truth because I don't want to be a part of this insanity. I really don't. You know why? So I can be a nice holy Sharon. That's really the whole point, isn't it? Like, my husband wanted to know if I was interested in picketing, and I went inside, and no, I am not interested. Spirit is not saying that that would help me. What would help me now is to always be honest where I'm at and to realize that I haven't left God and to realize I have not left God. And the character's not as important as it would like to believe it is. So, you know, he's talking to, you know, when he's saying this kid guy is asking him, suppose you have two Course in Miracles students, and one of whom is sick and the other is constantly reminding him that this is a dream. Again, it depends on the motivation. It's always the motivation. Are you trying to show your brother how much you know from the Course? Are you trying to show your brother how good you are? That you're a great student? All of that is just ego. It's just so funny because you get so But the thing is, in the bottom line, though, like I have to call myself out on something and do a ho'oponopono with yesterday, because I was annoyed that they were sending me to another school. And the ego was talking about me being 70 and too old for this, blah, 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 blah. Now, I realized when I was having that bit of ego response to myself, how horrible it feels when you listen to that. The ego is a loud, loud sensing machine, and it's loud, So ego is just the part that just wants to be real. It's just like Pinocchio, right? I mean, the ego lies just like Pinocchio lied. That's what he does. That's what the egos do. They lie. They have to lie. They think they're just these, the thing I've always said in this group and other groups is meet yourself where you are, because you're not always going to be in Oz. You still have to walk this yellow brick road home. And and then all of a sudden you'll hear the song lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. And that is truly what we are looking at. The rope that has never been a rope. The rope that we think is there is not there. We are hallucinating. And you don't certainly need acid to be here. So then what happens to the insane son of God? Well, then they take these ketamines and all this other stuff to get the hell out of here. But we don't have to do anything to get the hell out of here. We just have to see in vision, right? Because it's always about that. So I love that you shared today, Regis. I really love when you share, and I'm really excited if you come up with a podcast. But what Ken is trying to say at all times, what does it mean to be loving? To meet someone where they are. Because, we don't want to judge anybody's unfolding. I mean, their unfolding is coming from within. If ours is coming from within, so is theirs. And what Ken Wapnick teaches in a scholarly way is to be kind. That's not hard. So, but he's also very honest. You don't get there right away. This is called undoing by the one, right? The one infinite. So, I mean, I feel like yesterday's energy was not good coming from me. I really do. But I learned something. I learned that the victim still lives in me, And as long as I am attracted to victim and victimizer, I'm back in hell again. Now, I will tell you, and I said this in the beginning, and you weren't there, Regis. I love The Handmaid's Tale. Did you watch that, Regis?
No, I hadn't heard of it.
Well, I don't know if you want to watch it because it's not really the kind of movie that I recommend for entertainment, although the acting is amazing. It's on Hulu, and it's about the fact that the United States became a different country, Gilead. And what Gilead did was it kidnapped all the women, and anybody that wasn't fertile, the woman would be used to have a baby with their husband. And it was just massive abuse. So you would say, well, why am I watching it? Well, the acting. And to be quite honest, my husband and I really want to look at this and not get upset, because you can use a movie to train the mind too. I mean, they're doing that in a couple different groups, training the mind to see nothing but the screen, because that's all we are. And, it's important like that. I do call myself out when I fall short, and I did fall short yesterday, but today's a different moment, Interesting, in the 12 steps, they say one day at a time. And then when you get to Course in Miracles, it's just here right now, one moment at a time. This mind was always afraid it was doing it wrong. But I have found out that most people have that belief, And so to get rid of the specialists is to know that everybody's ego is the same, right? It's all crazy, crazy, crazy. But I love what you said about the holy encounter, because if you see your brother, you're seeing your own thoughts. And I don't know, Regis, I love kids, but yesterday I was not the character really. I wasn't playing my character role or anything. I was just in a grievance. Mainly because they made me go to another school. So you see, that is what happens when I forget who I am. A lot of times if I get sick, the best thing I could say is I wanted that. The best thing I could say. Why? Because it's only my mind. You want to get out of hell, own everything. Yes, we all have hellish thoughts. That's why we have a president right now who has brought a seeming hell to a lot of people. And I really, if you have compassion, if you look at him through true compassion, you'd see that he's the Christ. And then in compassion, understanding that he too had been abused, right? But isn't that exactly what this movie's about? It's about the victim and the victimizer at all times. So one of the things that I really, really love about Ken Wapnick is he understood the psychology of the mind. Because the mind itself is a battleground. I know that whoever opened the course and felt like that was their teaching felt release right away. And I just love the process now more than I ever did. And I also like calling myself out on my crazy behaviors. Dove had taught on Sunday in Waking Together, and it was very powerful. Now, at one point, I was having temper tantrum because of the president being elected, and blah 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 blah. And who would have voted? Blah blah blah. This is me talking to me. So what a waste of time and energy, right? He says, one thing about Ken, he is very long-winded, okay, because he's just wants to give you everything, and he does. But, when you read things slowly, they seep into you. And I would say that everybody that is on here or listening is really, really blessed. And I'll bet, because otherwise we'd be fed to the sharks if we believed this ego was real. With that, it is now 10:30, and we are and I hope, Regis, you can stay. We're doing Bill's book, Thetford, who, Lynn and I just love him. I mean, I'm sure everyone loves him because he was just he's just his gentleness personified. So let's do that, Lynn. Are you there? She might have.
All right. I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, don't think I'm not here just because I don't unmute my mic immediately.
Yeah, well, that would be my ego that can't shut up. Can I ask you something, Lynn? There's a song I sent you, and I'd love you to play it. I got it from, Myra, of course, person. And I sent it to you. If you look on your phone, I had sent you this and I would love you to play it.
Okay, you send it to me on my phone. All right, I will